And let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our spirits be ever acceptable unto thee, who is our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So today we celebrate the baptism of Christ, and we go into the season of Epiphany, which is a season when we focus on understanding how each one of us is called to serve God, to become clearer as to how we are called in this year, in this time, to serve the God we know. Now, sometimes we have a real sense of clear calling, and sometimes life gets fuzzy, especially at the edges, right? What am I really supposed to do? Now, for those of us who run around the GA, this is especially a year, a time when life is fuzzy, okay? We've been running around with like chickens without our heads right now, and we will be for the next month, as we run around and try to think and look at the pieces of legislation that our legislators are looking at as to what will bring justice. See, I don't go down there and run around with my head cut off for just every piece of legislation that comes by, even every one I might like. I go down and I look at what will bring equality. That is my core. What will bring an equal playing field for people throughout our Commonwealth? What will make it so that people have an opportunity to be able to thrive in our Commonwealth, all people. And so it is part of my Christian faith that I do that. I do that not separate from my faith, but as part of my faith. I think that just like Jesus tried to make it so that people could walk back into the communities in which they lived and be received and be part of the community, that was when healing took place. Jesus' healing was not, here, I touch you and you're better. Jesus' healing said to people, you're whole when you get back into the community. Wholeness had to do with re-entry, with recommitment, with going back in, with being part of the whole. Because in those days, when somebody was sick, since they didn't have the understandings that we do, even if how they were sick was that their leg was broken, people were afraid that it was contagious. So if you were contagious, the thing to do was to set you aside so you wouldn't make everybody else sick. That was the world Jesus lived in. And Jesus said, if we don't make people whole and help invite them back into the community. So Jesus was constantly, at the end of his healings, he would constantly say, now go to the priests and get blessed so you can go back into the community. Because the community needs to function in love. The community is how you know belovedness. Very few of us have enough mountaintop experiences to be able to have our whole experience of being beloved by God being from out there on the mountaintop. Most of us know we're beloved by God by how the community interacts with us. And if the community doesn't have space for us, it is very hard to believe we are truly beloved by God. And yet we are All. All in this room, all in Richmond, all in Puerto Rico in the midst of what's going on there, all in Iran and Iraq, all over the world are beloved of God. And we, as the community of faith and hope, are called to make that real. To find ways to constantly make it real. So for that reason, the global missions of the UCC, as well as our OCWM, has already been sending resources to Puerto Rico this week. Why? Because in the middle of that, they need to know that people care. In the middle of those earthquakes, they need to know they're beloved of God. And so we send water. We send blankets. We send the things they need to survive. And so if you are getting the UCC email blurbs, you have already been asked to send money. I know that. To help replenish. It's not that we don't have the money for the first wave of a disaster, right? But we have to replenish so we're ready for the next wave. That's how this works. One of the best things about being a part of a big church like we are, a national church, is that when we see disaster happening around the world, we get to know that in our name, a response is happening. In our name, stuff is going there already. And what the UCC tends to be the good at is the long term. So we are often the ones there at the end as well. We tend to be good at getting volunteers to go in at the end and rebuild things. And so that is often where the UCC spends a lot of its resources because, you know, most disasters have a long period before things are whole again. When I went with kids to Florida, it was 4 years after the hurricane we were responding to. And we were putting roofs back on people's trailers. There's a long period there. So we are responders in the short and the long term because that's how we provide for people. But we also provide for people at looking at systemic issues. What is happening that makes it so that people don't feel beloved today? So sometimes, you know, some of the bills that we will speak to as national church, as local, we will speak to things that have to do with equality for LGBTQ people so that they can't lose their housing for being known for who they are. We will speak. I have already been working on the ERA stuff that, you know, will go through, we hope, fairly quickly. There will be other issues. And quite honestly, when I'm down there and I'm down there representing you, that is what my contingent of what I speak on is things that have to do with equality. Things that have to do with people being able to live. It does much better if you make a living wage than if you think our church is going to provide food for you enough to live. Right? We would much rather that your job provide for you. These are the kind of things that are systemic that we deal with. And we do this kind of work because we follow somebody who said justice that allows all people wholeness is what we're about. That's how we act our faith. Our faith is not something to make us feel good. It's nice if it does, but that's not what it's about. It's when we love our neighbor as ourselves and take care of them that we then show our total compassion and love for God. And that's not always easy. That's sometimes very hard to find the ways and to be willing to go outside of our comfort zones and to do things that make it so that we show the love of God. But that's the call that Jesus put upon us. That's how we know that all people are beloved, is that we make that their reality. Who do you know that has not felt beloved this week? Maybe they got a no from an insurance company for a treatment they need. So they have not felt very beloved. Maybe they got an eviction notice. Maybe you know somebody who got bullied in school or at work for who they are. Reaching out to those individuals as well as dealing with the systemic is how we show the love of God. When Jesus was baptized, Jesus claimed his understanding of who he was called to be. A call that in Luke's gospel is written about in the Magnificat. A call that in other gospels will be shared, that it is the servant's song when he stands up and reads in the temple. But he claims himself as needing to act for justice, to act in love. And those two things are sometimes very hard to do at the same time. For when you are acting, it is sometimes easy to get really angry at the other side, right? You know, we sit there even with our TV sets and we see people who do things that we don't agree with, who act in a way that we don't think that's our faith, and we want to yell at the TV set, even if we don't do anything else. But Jesus says we act in love. We find a way to take care of our neighbor with love and generosity. Not to silence them. Not to make sure everybody agrees with us. But to make sure that all people, all over the world, know that they are beloved of God. Amen.